If you like what we do here on Skiba News Nation, please like and subscribe, and also share with others so we can grow the biggest truth-seeking community on the internet. Huge shout out to all of our Patreons out there. If you like bonus content, you want some extra Skiba News Nation stuff, please go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation.
Welcome to Skiba News Nation, bringing you unfiltered views, news, interviews, discussions, and more. And now, here's your host, Jeremiah Skiba, award-winning musician and son of Rob Skiba.
With the son of the legendary Rob Skiba. Jeremiah Skiba, what's up?
With my great and insightful co-host, Mr. Jake Graham. It's like I don't even want to wake up.
He's on a quest for truth.
Hey,
Okay.
Skiba News Nation family, we have a very special guest, you know, from films like Back to the Future, Charlie's Angels, but so many other amazing projects. And he's one of my favorite actors, filmmakers, and I'd like to welcome Mr. Crispin Glover. Thank you for coming on our show and talking about your
Absolutely.
awesome new movie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So can you tell me a little bit about the new movie, Mr. K? I watched a trailer and it was just so interesting. It's like a mind bender, as Jake was telling me before the show.
Well, now I have two films. There's Mr. K is a film that I acted in, and then there's the film that I'm premiering on October 2nd at the Museum of Modern Art, which is a film that I made and have been working on for many years called No, You're Wrong, or Spooky Action at a Distance. Yes, I'm promoting both things. It's a funny way that it's sort of happening because I've been touring with my films for many years. It's between 2005 and 2020. I toured the United States, Canada, Europe, New Zealand, Australia, Japan. Uh, every year between 2005 and 2020, I toured at least once a year. And then the pandemic happened, which caused me to not be able to, nobody could tour. Uh, but I've toured with my first two films, What Is It? And It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine, with a live dramatic narration of different books some of which I've published, but I made these books over the years. Uh, Mostly they were made in the 1980s and early 90s. And this was a way I realized the live performance was a way I could distribute my own films. One of the venues that I started touring in 2005 was the Music Box Theater in Chicago. And the year after I began showing my films and performing my shows there at the Music Box Theater, which is a big vaudeville era venue, 700 seats. Uh, I think it was in 2006 that they uh, started a distribution label called Music Box Films. So Brian Andreotti is the head of that. He's the fellow that I worked with, and he was very helpful with getting my films reviewed. And it's an unusual distribution model that I've done because I personally tour with the films and the live shows, and that's not obviously that's not the corporate norm.
Right.
But Brian was really helpful, and he's the head of the distribution element of Music Box Films. And when Mr. K premiered in Toronto, I think it's been over a year now. I acted in that film a couple of years ago. My own film, No You're Wrong, or Spooky Action at a Distance, I've been making it way longer. I started developing that film in 2007. Which is the year that I premiered my second film, It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine in Sundance. So this film's been in a long time in the making. But Brian Andreotti came to TIFF in Toronto, where Mr. K premiered, and I talked with him. He was curious if I would make appearances with Mr. K because I'd made appearances with my films before, and I said, well, I could do. I wouldn't do what I do with my own films with the live show, the Q&A, and the book signing, but I could do some kind of appearance. And so they did pick up Mr. K with the idea that I would make appearances with it in LA, New York, and Chicago. And I had said to him maybe we could figure something out where the promotion goes along around the same time. And it has been helpful. There's been some things that were actually made some elements more difficult, but ultimately it was helpful to be able to correlate publicity and promotion at the same time. And so Mr. K, okay, I have so the schedule is that I premiere my film with my live show at the Museum of Modern Art, October 2nd. Then that's in New York City. And then October, I believe it's 8th and 9th, they show Mr. K two nights at the IFC, which I've been at the IFC with my shows and films since 2007. Then I have a week-long run with my shows and films at the IFC from October 10th through the 16th. Then I go to Los Angeles. I have two shows at the Arrow, which is run by the American Cinematheque. I've been working with the American Cinematheque since 2005. I had been showing at the Egyptian on Hollywood Boulevard, but the Egyptian has a different. Since I was there, it's been purchased by Netflix, but the American Cinematheque still has ability to program. So there could be something that will work out at a later date at the Egyptian as well. But the Arrow is a beautiful deco venue in Santa Monica. So I'm glad that I'll be able to be at that venue as well. So I have two nights. I think it's the 18th and 19th at the Arrow Theater in Santa Monica under the American Cinematheque. And then they program another venue in Los Feliz called the Los Feliz 3, which is also a nice deco venue. And Mr. K, I'm forgetting the exact date, will play a few days after that. I'll have a Q&A for that. Then I travel to Chicago at the Music Box, and Mr. K will play, I'm forgetting the date, one night. I'll have a Q&A, and then the next night I'll be performing my live show and presenting Know You're Wrong or Spooky Action at a Distance Q&A and book signing. And then there's another one that was added, which is the Coolidge Corner in Boston. I think that's November 3rd, which I've not played before, but it's a beautiful old vaudeville era deco. I don't know if it's deco, but it's a beautiful, large vaudeville era venue. I like the venues are important to me because I play them. You know, I'm playing a
Yeah.
live show, and often they're great movie palaces as well, and their projection key is good, which is important to me as a filmmaker. So it's a way to get the films distributed as they're meant to be seen in cinemas as opposed to streaming on computers, which I know
Yeah.
limits the visibility of my films, but I made them to be a cinema experience. So,
I
uh,
love that you called it like you bring up vaudeville because every time somebody of my generation I talk about vaudeville, they have no idea what I'm talking about. But my family lineage comes from vaudeville performers.
oh, great. Where did they
And
do?
I know this is like a historic legend that I've been told by my grandma before she died. She said her parents did like some kind of trapeze act or something like that on the Ed Sullivan Show the day Elvis made his appearance. And
Oh,
as Elvis was performing, he was holding my grandmother as they were performing. And I was like, whoa,
great.
that's crazy because I'm a big Elvis fan, as you
Yeah,
can tell.
good,
And
good.
yeah, I love the fact that you're doing it out of, you know, love pretty much and you're doing it yourself. And I think that's really cool, especially in today's Hollywood. You know, it seems so you've always been different, and that's why I respect you as an actor and a performance artist.
Well, thank you. Yeah, the vaudeville era, just so people get clear on it, because I think people mix up what that means. Vaudeville was the main form of entertainment uh, up until cinema and
TV,
came in on, especially television. Uh, but people would come in and do a dancing act, a singing act, magic, and early cinema would come in. There'd be somebody that would narrate something, and then that would be followed by maybe a comedy, maybe even just a variety of things. But those performers vaudeville performers, if you're doing something live, and there's different definitions of live. Live can also mean not without a microphone, because originally there were no microphones. So
right?
singers had to fill that
Yeah, that big
place,
amphitheater.
and the speakers had to to speak with so everybody could hear. And there's a talent to that. You one has to genuinely engage. But even still, now we call live even if somebody has a microphone. But there still is something about being in front of an audience and connecting with it. And the live show I've been doing for many years, I've been very, you know, I've purposefully not had it something that's available digitally, and the same thing with my films. I've never released them digitally. Of course, people try to steal things, but that's illegal. And things are different once it becomes digital, and there's something called fair use, but that only comes into play once something that has been digitally released. And especially because my first film, it dealt with a lot of taboo areas, which I knew would, taken out of context of the show and the Q&A and everything, could be really difficult. But also there were actors in the first film. Most of the actors in the film had Down syndrome. And I just didn't want people taking it out of context where people can bully and do things online. That's just not acceptable, because that wasn't the purpose of the film in any means. So I'm protective about the movies. And but again, I not only is there a live show, I really love being able to show the films as they're meant to be projected up on screen. And all of the films were shot on film. The first two films were shot on regular 16, blown up to, it had a digital intermediate, then blown up to 35 millimeter prints. The new film I shot on 30, it's my first film shot on 35 millimeter negative, and then we did a huge amount of um, in camera color correction work. The color correction on the film by itself took 2 years. There's been a huge amount of work on that. This film is just every step of this film has taken an enormous amount of time. I'm not happy how long it took, but it did. And so now I am glad. I'm looking forward to having this. It's a genuine premiere too. The October 2nd at the Museum of Modern Art in New York will be the first time I'm showing it in front of an audience. I've shown it to very few people, some filmmaker friends, but not too many people. So it will be very, very interesting. It's a different experience when you show it in front of an audience than in front of individuals. And of course, if it was a big corporate movie, they would have had test screen audiences and all this kind of thing. But my test audience is the premiere of the film, so we'll see. I keep my fingers crossed. I don't know what the reaction will be.
You want me to play the trailer?
Sure.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
That old style is really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I've tried to make it for the most part technically. As I said, it was shot on the 35 millimeter camera negative, and I've tried to keep the technology pre, for the most part, pre 1970s technology. So, I mean, I will admit to having used digital corrective techniques, but for certain
Only
things.
when you have to.
But it's not something that would you would notice was digital.
Right.
So I'm trying to keep it in a traditional of the era of a pre-1970s movie or even earlier. Well, some of the things are to be replicating much early, semi kind of destroyed films, as many silent films have a lot of anomalies from age. So we purposefully would reshoot, we reshot certain scenes that had already been shot off of a monitor or a two or 4K, but with a hand crank camera that was owned by a great Czech filmmaker, Karl Zeman. Cinephiles will know how great Karl Zeman is. And one of the members of the Czech word for not-for-profit organization, Spolek. I started as Spolek, not-for-profit organization with 5 Czech fellows for well, right now it's preserved 35 millimeter developing equipment. It's all stored in a couple of houses at my property that I own there, and it's with the idea that it can become a functioning 35 millimeter laboratory. But just the fact that we have all this stuff there, I have a 35 millimeter 4K scanner that I bought in Los Angeles and had that shipped over to the Czech Republic, where one of the members of the Spolek was technically oriented and able to get that updated in a certain way so that we were able to do the transfer of the 35 millimeter negative to to bring it into the digital realm. But then the color correction, there's 5 different periods in the film: 1868, 1888, 1918, 1948, and contemporary. So it wasn't something I had originally planned. Everything was shot on 35 millimeter color negative. In fact, it will be the last film ever released that was shot on Fuji film. By the time we got to the contemporary, we were shooting with Kodak, because Kodak is really the only film producer at this point, manufacturer of 35 millimeter and 16 millimeter film. And luckily, it's great. Kodak's a great stock. But there used to be Fuji, and my first film, What Is It? Which was shot on regular 16 millimeter negative. That's the last film that was ever uh, distributed that was shot on Agfa film stock. But similarly, as time went on, I had some of the last stock that was available, and then I kept shooting, and I ended up using Kodak for certain parts. I don't have anything against Kodak. It's just it is interesting to use each of the film formulas have a slightly different quality. Agfa had a sort of reddish pastel quality. It was really a beautiful stock. Fuji picks up on greens and yellows really nicely. But they're all beautiful stocks. But because of course digital, it's becoming more and more rare. But luckily there are advocates and people that understand. I have nothing against digital. Digital is great, but there's something really great about film too.
How would you
So,
sell that to a younger audience, people that are growing up with their phones and tablets, and how would you kind of encapsulate that experience of watching a film in the older medium in comparison, the emotions, the feelings?
well, because I grew up with film, there was no digital. To me, the grain pattern of the film, I can very much see the difference between grain pattern and the pixel pattern of the electronic capture. To me, well, again, and there are things, even most, I believe all films that are released in theaters, I'm pretty certain they still use a layer of grain pattern that they put over it because the electronic look, like we're on an electronic digital look, we're used to that. And news always, even before pixels, well, I guess it was horizontal lines on video, that was electronic, but it had a different quality to me when I'm watching the news. Even in the 70s, there was video news, but film was, if I see a period movie, it's a bit distracting to me in a way if it's not shot on film, because if we had digital cameras in the 1930s, and I grew up watching uh, digital images captured in the 1930s, I wouldn't have that feeling. I'd say, all right, well, in the 1930s, things were captured with pixels. And I would look at a contemporary footage that was captured to replicate the 1930s, and I would say, all right, well, that's what it was like. But it wasn't like that. There was only film in the 1930s. So if I look at a new movie shot to be the 1930s, but it was shot with a digital technology, it feels a little funny to me. But that's because of my experience of growing up with film. Not everybody would feel that way. Although there's an actress filmmaker that's in the film, Kansas Bowling, and I'm not sure of her age exactly now, but she made a film that she shot on film when she was 18, and she grew up in essentially the digital age, but realized she understood the beauty of film itself. I know she's passionate about shooting her films on film, and there are some people that just are passionate about film, and I admire it. But again, I admire anybody that can make a good film, whether it's shot digitally or on film. I won't be biased, but it's and it's served me very well. I've had digital intermediates on all of my films, and it really helped me. I know there's that film called Oppenheimer. The
Mm.
filmmaker was very specific in not even having digital intermediate. He did it the old-fashioned way of where I assume the offline cut was done digitally, but online, I mean, maybe not, but maybe it wasn't done digitally. But I don't see why they would do it because it wouldn't have any reference within the film, and it is easier to cut digitally. But the SMPTE time code would then be transferred, and they did the negative cut the way they used to do it, and then made a positive print straight from the negative, which there is something to that in terms of the purity of even the look. So that's admirable. I do think when there is something to be said for keeping film for a certain kind of look and quality and feel.
Yeah, it goes hand in hand with how you're describing your live touring of your production. It's interesting the combination of the old medium with the live theater style distribution. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting just how you're pairing those two together, and it's creating this experience that you really have to go to in person. So maybe we can talk about the film. And you said it was a project that you've been working on since 2007. Know You're Wrong, or Spooky Action at a Distance. Is the full title all of that together, or is it either or?
The full title is it all together because it evolved. The screenplay, I started developing the screenplay in 2007, which was the year that my second film, which was my previous film, this is my third feature film, and that premiered in Sundance in 2007. So I was able to start concentrating on the next project, which was this. And I knew what was going to happen. It was developed for myself and my father to act in together. My father, Bruce Glover, uh, he's been in films like Chinatown and Diamonds Are Forever. He worked a lot in the 70s and my whole life. But he and I had never acted in anything together before. Um and there are different backstories as to how it came about, but suffice it to say that I developed it for he and I to act in together, and it originally was really just to keep costs down. My initial idea that it was just going to be myself and my father. No other cast members would be visible, and there would be kind of shadow characters that would be sort of silhouetted off screen or on the telephone. But then I was interested in a certain kind of hero's journey structure that had romantic interest characters in it. And as soon as I started writing these female characters, I realized, no, those they have to be flesh and blood humans. And as it turned out, the shadow characters, it just technically is difficult to keep people in silhouette or shadow. So I dealt with that in a different way. But I then had to, have actresses be in the film. We shot that script took a number of years to work on, and I was still working on it. Well, I asked a friend of mine who had been involved in what would be part three of the trilogy. This film is not part three of the trilogy. I worked on parts one and two and touring with them for more than 20 years, basically. So I wanted to step outside of that thematic element of what is the thematic element of the It trilogy and go into some different territory. And but Mike Pelagi is a friend of mine that had been involved in the writing of what will be the part three of the trilogy, and I knew that my father was going to end up becoming involved in the writing, and I knew that would be difficult, and so I wanted to have somebody that I could confer with and talk to, and Mike's a good fellow and a good writer, so we worked on it for a while, and then inevitably I sent an early, I would call it an outline to my father, and he had questions and thoughts about things that I don't think he ever really understood certain things. My father died earlier this year, uh,
Sorry.
but thank you. But uh, I invited him in as I knew would happen. I invited him in to uh, become part of the writing with the idea of it being dialogue suggestions, but it was more than that. Uh, and ultimately, I mean, not that it was bad. He did ultimately make very good contributions to the screenplay, but it really was not it was not easy. I had directed him before in my second film. He's in the second film, and directing him as an actor was not difficult. And acting with him, this was the first time he and I acted together. That was an interesting experience as well. But writing was that was very difficult. But it became a part of the process, and then that's how the title came in two different ways, having to do with the process of making the film. The spooky action at a distance came in later, and it's some I don't know how much to say or not to say because I don't want to dictate what people are thinking about the film. The nature of all of the films that I've made is ideally to have that the audience members have an interpretation that it's not something that dictates to the audience, you must think about it in this way. There are suggestions and it's very specific in my head, but I it's constructed in a way that people ideally will have their interpretation of things. And as an audience member, that's what I like to do as well. But we fight. I started having the sets built in 2010, so that's 3 years after the the screenplay started becoming developed, and the screenplay was still being developed at that point. And then the sets took 2 years to build. We started shooting it the end of 2012, or was it the end of 2013? No, end of 2012. And then, oh wait, no, 2013. Oh gosh, now I'm forgetting. 2013, yeah. We and so yeah, end of 2013 is when we started shooting. And then I would do production segments. So we shot all of the 1868 and 1888 part at the end of 2013. Then we shot the uh, the 1918 portion, which is the bulk of the film. We shot that in two different production segments that were longer. Most of the production segments would be 10 days. So there was a 10-day production segment in 2013, then there was one 10-day, and I think two 10-day production segments, which were for 1918. That was in 2014. Then I came back the following year, and I think we had one longer production segment in that year to shoot the 1948 part. That was what the original Know You're Wrong screenplay was. I edited all that together, and there was something that I needed work, I needed fixing to me. And so this is where the spooky action at distance part came into being. And like I say, I don't want to explain too
Yeah.
much, but I'm talking about the process of the filmmaking. So I worked then on that part of the film. I'll say this: it essentially became a film within a film, and that spooky action at a distance part, I think I shot for two or even three more years. I think the last shooting date was in 2018. Then I was formally editing the film. I edited the film as well. And that was more than a year. And it was in late 2019 when the post-production started. And then there was a pandemic, which that did slow things down a bit, but the color correction took 2 years. It's then there was a title issue, doing titling. There's a complex titling issue, which also had to do with the color correction because each section had to be color corrected differently, but the titles were done at a different age, a different time, and then they had to be aged in the same way that the film had been aged. It was I'm even still right now. There's some audio issues that are this minute. What is it? We have 3 days. There's still things being worked on. It just it's a lot of work.
Wow.
Yeah, your
Yeah.
attention to detail is amazing. The how you're able to do all of it, and I think that that's very cool. You know, especially in a world where we live in AI, and I kind of wanted to. This is one question that I've always wanted to ask you ever since I've seen you talk about them stealing your face for Back to the Future, which I think was completely wrong. You won a lawsuit. What do you think about AI and the way that they can put anybody's face onto anything? I mean, I think you were like the first person that actually like won a case for that. And now
Well,
everybody's using AI.
I mean, just to be specific, the of course the lawsuit predated AI. However,
Right.
the concept and what the Screen Actors Guild had a large part of the strike did have to do with how AI was going to be treated, and that was important. It was good that they made that strike. As far as I'm aware, I'm not happy to have this distinction. I'm the only person to have had this exact experience, and I promise you, it is not fun. It is really not fun. Not only is it um, the initial element, but on top of it, then one producer in particular, Bob Gale is his name, has taken it upon himself for decades to blame me
Mhm.
for his thievery. So he's essentially slandered and libeled me for decades. But there's, in terms of, well, I don't want to go into all the legality about it, but it's really bad because people believe it. I have a
Yeah,
reputation of being difficult, which what he's done is there's this. I have played crazy characters. I've done things in media that are whatever, and utilizing that to millions of people listening to commentaries for decades to cover his illegal actions, to make it look like I'm the reason that they had to they had to
right.
do. I mean, it's so. I mean, the
He
idea
like
that,
blacklisted you, and it's so like
well,
obvious
I mean,
to
blacklisting
me.
is relative. Luckily, I've maintained a career,
Yeah.
but it's clear what the intent was. It's
Yes.
clear that this is what and of course this was a very big film, and
Hmm.
so of course, and people, they believe, oh, a producer involved in this big kind of studio movie, they must be telling the truth. At the same time, that person, we all know, and he still won't admit that they did anything wrong. If you listen to his things, he said, well, we didn't do it. It was obvious that they had to intend to do it with the storyboarding from it's whatever. I shouldn't talk about it too much because it always gets clipped out, and then it's just me being
Yeah.
annoyed. But at the same time, I feel a certain obligation because it is important that people understand about ethics of utilizing people's images, and that is going to become a bigger, continuing thing with AI. But like I say, it isn't just the use of the image; it's then claiming me to be something other than I am for their continued use, which
Right.
extends the wrongdoing. That's the even worse part of it. But that's why I'll talk about it because yes, we need to make sure that doesn't happen in AI. AI, as far as the technology, of course, is fantastic. There are fantastic uses for AI if it's ethically dealt with.
Hmm.
But then there's going to be the question of how will that be ethically controlled? That's difficult.
That's
That
the
could
hard
be very
part.
difficult. Yeah, it's. I mean, I as a filmmaker would not be against using aspects of AI to help things. I can see the difference when I'm looking at AI versus standard digital work by craftsmen, and I can, of course, tell the difference between digital and film. But there's a thing that you do when you're working with film, strangely, and you go into the digital realm, you actually there's a stage where you digitally remove all the grain, or not all the grain, but and then you put a layer back in, so it evens it out uh, throughout the film. There's a concept where you could, from what I can tell, shoot something on film, and then if you had an issue, not to make it look like a big digital an AI thing, but you could extend a scene, or if you needed to move to an angle, and it could replicate what you had shot on a set,
Mhm.
at a much lower cost than if you had to build that set out. And I shoot on sets. So these are things I think about where, and there's even entire ways of producing an entire film that could change by being able to see what is acceptable to the brain where it isn't differentiating from what you saw that was shot on film. But I mean, that's the thing though also about AI. What could be a problem for an hour could in a whole day, in a single day, be resolved by the AI itself. So it will be very interesting to see what these continued advances are going to be. I as a filmmaker would ethically use AI. I would never do something like what was done to me, of course. I mean, that's just so I've experienced it. I
Well,
know.
and I love what you said. I watched something of you saying that you were upset because people thought that that was
Yes.
you, and
They still
that's
think
so
that.
wrong to me.
Of
And
course.
that's the reason why I only like and watch Back to the Future 1 because I know that you're in it, and they tried to fool everybody. So it's
They
not
did
just
well.
it. What?
They fooled most people because, of course, it was done with great care. That's why this
Mhm.
idea that oh well we didn't know we all these backflips and cartwheels that Bob Gale does, it makes no sense. It had to be so carefully concocted to because they see had they only used footage. That's another thing is I think even somewhere on the IMDb it still says that what my lawsuit was about was reusing footage from the first film. No way, shape, or form
Mhm.
is that what my lawsuit was, not about that. And in fact, had that been the only thing they had done, had they just reused my footage with no other person involved, that would have been fine. I would have had no issue with that. So be it. But what they did was had another actor making that actor's choices with my face interspliced with my parts of my original footage. I'm sure there are parts that even a very astute viewer would think are me that aren't me, and I would have never made those acting choices. To me, they're bad acting choices, so it makes me look like a bad actor. That's why it's illegal. Because
Yep.
what is acting?
Right.
If you're making choices, that's a huge part of what you're acting. It isn't just about your face or your. I mean, it's a big part of it is how you appear, but then the choices that you make. So if somebody else is making the choices, which is again the same issue with what AI is about. But anyhow, I shouldn't talk. I don't like talking about. There's good things to talk about, and I just it's a frustrating thing that I like I say people cut it out, and then there's just all of these clips of me on the internet talking about that one particular thing, and I feel that it gets a bit repetitive.
Well, we won't cut it out. I think it's very important to with this new AI topic to discuss that. But
Yeah,
like
I
with
agree. Yeah, that's why I don't. That's why I do end up talking about it because I have genuinely experienced this, and it's bad. It's really not fun. And
yeah.
there's multiple levels that it affects one's life. That it's really it was that's the other thing is I know it was done purposefully. It was done as a bullying aspect, which
Hmm.
is something that had started earlier, specifically from Bob Gale. I mean, like I say, I don't want to. I really shouldn't keep talking about it because it's a can of worms that I can just go over on and on about, and it's better for me to change the subject somehow.
Well, well, on another more positive note, we did want to bring into our interview one of your impacts personally on our YouTube channel with Skiba News Nation and Jeremiah, his parents. One of their beautiful moments. Maybe Jeremiah, would you like to tell the story? I think it'd be more appropriate.
So I lost my mom December of 2024, and we lost my dad in a couple years before. It all feels like one big long
Right.
year, but my dad used to say to my mom, "You're my density." And so her only public speech, we pulled a clip out of that movie of you saying, "You're my density."
And I have the honor to introduce our dear friends and the ones that are carrying on Brother Rob's legacy, Sheila and Jeremiah Skiba.
Thank you so much for being here, first of all. And this is way outside my comfort zone, but so bear with me. But first, I wanted to start with a lighthearted thing as we get into more serious things. So I'm going to play this video.
Look, tell her destiny brought you together. Tell her that she is the most beautiful girl you've ever seen in the world. Girls like that stuff. What are you doing, George? I'm writing this down. This is good stuff. Yeah, okay. Oh, let's go. Oh, take care of that. Lou, give me a milk. Chocolate. Sherry Coke. Lorraine, my density has brought me to you.
What?
Oh, what I meant to say was,
Wait a minute. Don't I know you from somewhere?
yes, I'm George McFly. I'm your density. I mean, your destiny.
So I played that video because Rob was the most joyful, happy person that you will ever know. And so often when we were out in the field doing ministry and going to conferences or anywhere people would have us, we went. And he would just say, as long as you pay for myself and my wife, we'll come. We don't charge and all that. And so it was a journey of fun and excitement. And so he often said, "You are my density." Just like that guy.
And both of them, I know, would love the fact that we're interviewing you right now. Like you were like one of the top people when we started the YouTube channel that I was like, I would love to sit down and talk to him about so many things.
Oh, good.
And
Good.
it's just it means a lot to me to have you here, and I just, you know,
Well, thank
it's
you.
awesome.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
It's a very beautiful full circle thing for us on Skiba News Nation because, we've shared that clip of Jeremiah's mother. You're acting there in that scene, they would say that back and forth to each other. But really, I wanted to ask another question in regards to just what you were saying about not leading the audience and what they believe when it comes to, their opinion coming away from your creative project. You don't want to preemptively set what happens in their mind when they absorb your medium. So whenever it comes to something like this project you've been working on for many years, since 2007, you have in your mind what your metaphor you're putting into the filmography, what you're trying to convey. Whenever audiences go in, obviously with things like the interesting symbology, that the tone, the type of environment you're creating when people go to watch the film, whenever people come away with it with their own perspective, and if it's different than what you had in mind, what is that like as a creative? I mean, what is the goal from audiences?
Well, I like it when somebody has an interpretation. That's I have not heard before. It's interesting to me. What is it in particular? The first film, which I was actively reading Louis Buñuel's My Last Sigh, his autobiography, and In Conversations with, which was kind of a sister book that came out at the same time. And he goes into a lot of detail about the surrealist movement that he was part of in the 1920s and 30s in Europe, and how uh, it was interesting because I don't think he's lying. He stated that he did not put meanings on how certain things were juxtaposed. A surrealist game was to, well, the probably the most famous thing that people are familiar with is what is it called? Carpe diem? No, the exquisite corpse, where you fold a paper in three places and somebody draws the head and shoulders, and then it's flipped over so the next person can only see where the shoulders land, and then they draw the middle section of the body down to the legs, and then it's flipped over again, and then the next person draws the leg portion, and then you unfold it, and you have an exquisite corpse, which is always three different sections that are juxtaposed in a random way that's interesting. It does something to the brain. But the surrealists would have games to bring this sort of irrational quality to become a something an art the viewer would experience. But what was also interesting about reading Buñuel's autobiography, which I more and more understand now, was the political aspects of surrealism, because he stated that if all of the people that had been formal members of the surrealist group, capital S, looked forward into the future where there are paintings in museums and books published, films made, all of them universally would have felt that they were failures because the movement was not an art movement, it was a political movement. And it was in Paris where there were all these different cafes that the various political groups would go and meet. So one cafe would be the communists, another cafe would be the fascists, another cafe would be the anarchists, another cafe would be the social democrats, and one cafe was the surrealists. So they were thinking of themselves as a political force. And there were a couple of different surrealist manifestos written, which I've read, and they're very difficult to understand. I think purposefully so. But I do understand the political concept of it. I even like the political concept of it, although it's impossible. It's not possible for it to be it would be too. I feel like the idea would be that everybody would be on the level of comprehending the world in a way that surrealism would be a functional aspect of day-to-day life, or at least the concept of that being a plausibility. But just to get everybody to get to that point of analysis, I it's it's interesting. I like the idea of it, and I understand it. And in certain ways, I agree that would be fantastic, but I don't know how the world would be transformed to that point.
Yeah, it's really interesting with how creative mediums can, in a way, be prophetic unwittingly. And also the concept of movies are like the modern day parable, and as a creative producer, director, actor, what could you share with us about your thoughts on how sometimes films, TV can oftentimes have these synchronicities with real
Well,
time world events. How does that
it's
even?
it's it's funny that you should say this because the title "Spooky Action at a Distance" is exactly about that. I and Jeremiah was talking about his parents. Both of my parents are in this film, and both of them died during the making of the film. I wanted to get this film done at least before my father died. I really was trying hard, and it just this film has been it's difficult to describe, but and it is strange to me that it's now I am genuinely having the premiere. My father died in March. Where are we? September, April, March, April, May, June, July, August. So 6 months later. And there's things about the film that are about this topic. It's and like I say, I don't want to say too much, but it's deeply exactly what you just asked about is very much what the film for me is dealing with.
Wow. Well, I guess we'll try not to go too far into the topic as to not give anybody any further information on what it'll be
Well,
about.
I
But
mean, I'm not trying to be overly obtuse, but I also don't want to dictate to people what they should be thinking about it.
that's funny because the line of questioning, even if we were to like try to tap into your brain regarding others' creative projects, you'd be giving us insight into your own just by going through the thought
Sure.
process. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it is interesting looking at, I'll watch great filmmakers interviews and them talking about other filmmakers. It's fascinating because you can really start to see how they're functioning, which is if you're making films, seeing how other filmmakers are functioning can be quite educational and interesting. I more and more find myself watching that kind of content of different filmmakers talking about the process of making the film. And on some levels, this film also has to do with the process of making of the film as well.
What
Yeah,
about Mr. K?
Mr. K was a film that I acted in. It was shot in Belgium. I think it over 2 years ago. Is a while back now. But although my film is even further back shot than Mr. K, so it's more. Mr. K was more recently shot than my film. I acted in the film. It's people. They're often describing it as Kafkaesque. The title Mr. K and the writer director Tallulah goes. She admits that the title or says that the title is influenced by the main character of the trial written by Franz Kafka. However, it is not an adaptation of a Kafka story. It's she's been influenced by the I would say very specifically by the Orson Welles film adaptation of the trial by Franz Kafka. And I love Orson Welles, whether his films were um, considered his most successful films or less successful films. He's always interesting to see what he's attempting to do because I can relate to the struggle of trying to make your own films, not necessarily within the corporate structures, and certainly uh, Orson Welles was dealing with that. Although he's a fascinating character, but I would say his the trial, as much as I enjoy watching Orson Welles, whatever he made, whether his film would be considered one of his better films, I still find it interesting. I feel like the voice that I have in my head when I read a lot of Kafka. Kafka was my favorite writer when I was 16. Until I read Dostoevsky, Kafka was my favorite writer. And I read a fair amount of Kafka when I was about 15 or 16. Then I read Dostoevsky in my mid 20s. But I still love Kafka's writing, but there's a very specific voice in my head that is Kafka. And there's a very specific theme in that I feel. I haven't read everything by Kafka. I've not read The Trial, for example, but I've read a fair amount of his stories. And to me, the theme that I see mostly with Kafka is sort of there's a sensitivity or a sensitive character that an incredible insensitivity that is surrounding, or an insensitivity to insensitivity. But also, I own property in the Czech Republic, and Kafka lived in Prague. He wrote in German, though. He didn't write in the Czech language. But I can feel some things about the Czech society even today, that I can see certain things that he was reacting to. But what Tallulah's influence on from Kafka, I talked about it with her a fair amount, because I did have a very particular concept in my head, which was probably quite different from the concept in her head, because I think she was really, in a certain way, more reacting to or influenced by Orson Welles's adaptation of Kafka. And Orson Welles's voice is, I don't mean his speaking voice, I mean his cinematic voice interpretation of Kafka is not necessarily the voice I had in my head about Kafka. I still enjoyed what Wells did, but it's different from my perception of Kafka. But she's open about it, saying that this was influenced by Kafka. She's not pretending that it's a Kafka adaptation, and it's fair enough to say this is influenced by that. And it ultimately is her story and dealing with her things. So I have my understanding, I think, of what she was influenced by, but and I had some different things I wanted to bring into it, which I don't think are necessarily in the film. Some of the things I wanted to bring into it, but what I appreciate is that it's a film which is something that people can have an open interpretation to it, and different people can have different interpretations than others. So I'm glad that I'm able to act in films sometimes that have some kind of artistic integrity or attempt, while being able to then fund my own films that really are what my art passion is about. And I serve as a craftsperson in acting in other people's films.
I did like what you said about how you have so many inputs, and this is kind of like my final thing that I wanted to say, but I'm obviously a big Back to the Future fan, and that's how I know you. But I like how you wanted to end the movie, which was, you said that money was the happiness, that
Well,
money. And I respected what you said, and I liked the way how you wanted it to end. And now that's how I see it. Every time I see the
well,
end, I'm like, oh no.
the thing is that in a certain way that's become super exaggerated. It's not. I this I was not given the screenplay. I had an audition and I was offered the role. They didn't allow me to read the screenplay, and I was 20 years old. It was a big Universal Studios, Steven Spielberg produced movie. Uh, so I thought, all right, well, yeah, I'll be in the movie. They were concerned about sending out scripts, and they worried about copyright, that it could get stolen, which is ironic considering what
Yeah.
happened to me. But so when I went into the movie, I hadn't read the script until I started working on it, which, it's why I hesitate to talk about it, is because if I talk about certain parts of things, people go, oh, well, he did this, but they don't understand what the
The
reaction
backstory.
was from. So when you work on a character, you've got to take all things into account. There's something I haven't talked about in media that was in the screenplay. I've talked about peripheral aspects, but for various reasons, I didn't want to really badmouth the things all the way. So I've refrained from saying certain things, much to my own detriment. But there was stuff that I did suggest that was changed. That if they had left in the movie, you see a lot of movies right now that were made around this time period that people say, oh, this is no longer acceptable. There
Mm.
was something like that in Back to the Future. If it had been left, and I asked to get it removed, and they did remove it. And if it had not been removed, people would not, I promise you, people would say that's really a problem that had been in the film. There was a peripheral aspect to that had to do with the monetary aspects, but it was part of it. So that was actually a side conversation. But because I haven't said the other stuff, that has been what's focused upon. I wasn't interested in changing the movie. It was about that my character had to play certain things. And I said to Zemeckis, it's not going to come off well to audiences if we have this thing. Ultimately, they agreed because they removed it. But I haven't talked about that. And they don't talk about it because they want to make me into this guy who deserved to have his face stolen. But that really isn't, it's so complicated. I've written a 500-page book, but it's not all about that. It's about other things. I really probably need to make a policy to not talk about it anymore, because it's just 500 pages is a lot, and it has to do with a thought process that I don't. I think culturally there is something. Propaganda functions. There's a reason why propaganda exists, because it functions. And it changes, if it's used in a certain way, it truly changes society.
Yeah.
And the current state of the United States, depending on one's perspective, I don't know. It doesn't seem like many people feel that the United States is doing particularly well. I don't think, regardless of what side of the so-called left or right, so-called red or blue, I don't think anybody's feeling great about how things are going.
Right.
Uh, and I would say there's been a fair amount of propaganda that has led the United States to the point where it is right now. And I also don't even feel that safe talking about it at this point.
Yeah.
There's really bad things going on. It's truly getting dangerous. That's the other thing about um, uh, the internet allows for a sort of vigilante justice, even if it's just online, where groups of people can come together and type things, and everybody says, "Oh, this person is a villain." They
Hmm.
don't know what's going on for real. But the problem with vigilante justice, even if it's done virtually, is sometimes that becomes actual physical violence.
Yep.
And I mean, and yet then there's a conundrum about the United States, because the United States was born out of violence. It was born out of a revolution against authoritarianism. And then the Second Amendment uh, was there to protect the First Amendment, which is ultimately this idea of what is it, to be able to raise well-armed, well-regulated militia. But the idea is to be able to, that the people, if they really ever felt that they were being taken over by an authoritarian situation, would be able to regulate a militia to oppose the government, which is how the United States was born. So it's a strange conundrum, because it's written into the Constitution essentially to have a violent revolution, and there are more guns in the United States than there are people. So it would be the most well-armed, bloodiest revolution the world has ever seen. So that's almost a prescription for how the United States is supposed to end, which is very daunting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very fascinating just how your line of work connects with just the First Amendment and the concept of freedom of speech. And I wanted to ask you, maybe for my last question, is how is creative mediums like film and music bastions of safety for this First Amendment right in the United States, at least? I mean, how are these kind of ways that people can preserve that right and do it in a way that isn't so incendiary? Because it seems like there's a lot of debate on this topic of the First Amendment and what people can say or represent. But I mean, why is music and television, film so important for allowing people to express themselves?
Well, when you mention film, music, I go into a lot of details in this book that I've written. I have a whole chapter about concepts about music, which is often, well, music is one thing, but we call music, there's also something, song speak, songs, which is stanza, refrain, maybe a variation, end song, or stanza, refrain, repeat, end song. That's a pattern. It's funny, because of all the chapters I've written in the book, the one that I think people would hate me for more than anything would be the one I've written about music. It's part of the reason. It's not just that chapter. I haven't published. I've published 5 books, which are the art books that I narrate. I could publish this book tomorrow. It's not about having a lack of the possibility of publishing it. The reason I haven't published it is I am concerned about publishing it. After I've written it all the way through, I realized the state of the situation right now is people are really, there's an economic disparity, and people are upset, rightfully upset. And what do they say? Something about revolutions happen when there are more have-nots than haves, and they realize it. Uh, and the internet is a communication device. How long will it take for people to calculate that there are far more have-nots than haves, and to take up arms and deal with it in a physical fashion? I don't know. I don't feel like that is going to happen tomorrow, but there's something very distressing going on.
Would you say that music and television, in a way, plays as that catalyst to, stir up those emotions for things to lead forward?
Well, you're using the word music, but that's I would differentiate, because music is a non-lingual medium. Music without words is the most abstract art form. It just has a forward motion. Once words are put onto it, it's a mixture of poetry, whatever, writing, and music. But there's a dictatorial element in that. Or, I mean, it can be done poetically, of course, but then there's a pattern in the stanza refrain, variation, stanza refrain, and song. Like I say, I don't want to get into too much detail about it, but I would say no. What has become the standard music in this, I won't use the word music because even though it has musical aspects, it's songs. It's a very particular pattern, and you can see the patterns through the centuries that I think there's a mix-up in that people think music leads people. It doesn't. It's following patterns of societal movements, and it reflects what the mood of the sociopolitical mode of the times are.
Yeah,
Stanza refrain, end song is a pattern that's been around for hundreds of years. It was a sort of a working class chant, and it's hard to it's sort of a complicated thing. Anybody I've talked to about it, nobody agrees with me on this. I have not talked to anybody that agrees, and people get really angry at me about this. But the thing is there's a pattern that's a pattern of the culture in the songs. There's no difference in the pattern between rap, punk, country, disco, trip hop, whatever it is. It's the same pattern. People get all worried about, what's your music? Are you into rap? Are you into country? And they think their identity becomes embroiled in whether they like heavy metal or that's completely different from country, but they're not, it's the same pattern. They're all the same exact pattern. If you look back at chants, meaning, in the Catholic Church made words. You had to have words in music in order for it to be allowable. There were wars about the Protestants protesting the Catholic Church. The Protestants didn't take hold and weren't allowed until Luther in the 1600s in Germany. And he then said, we don't have to have words in music. Music can be the voice of, their version of God, which brought about what we would call the Baroque era of music, which is one of my favorite eras of music. It's great. And then there were different variations. There's 100 years of Baroque, and then the scientific movement came in the late 1600s, 1700s, which is followed by what is the classical era of music. Then there was a working class that came into being in the 1800s, and Beethoven ushered in a very different form from the classical era, and then everybody was emulating 100 years after Beethoven what Beethoven had ushered in. We call that the Romantic era, and then the machine age starts to come in, and then there's what we call a modern era. That's another 100 years later. And these are all reflections of what was happening in the culture.
Wow.
Well, what we now, what you're calling music, you say music. Well, yes, there's music, but there are words on it. So we're going back to an era of the working class chant that is, it's questionable what it what it means. I don't think it means the freedom. I think it means the opposite. I think it is the most enslaved of all of the musics. People listen to their music and think this is freedom. It's to me, it's the opposite of freedom. The music without words is the most abstract art form. That's how, although there are structures within the symphony, Beethoven worked for his whole life to make some nuance change that I don't quite even understand. And he did do enormous changes, but what I was starting to say about the chants is that people would argue about I'm not sure if iambic pentameter is the right word. The measures, and how the rhyming schemes of how the chants would work. And this was going for 500 years. And if somebody made some small change, there was enormous arguments and political problems and outrage. And if anybody listens to a chant from, say, I don't know, the year 400 to the year 550 or whatever, we would have a very difficult time hearing the difference. But these were enormous things, kind of like what everybody's talking about now, or whether they're interested in country or heavy metal or whatever it is. It's the same thing. It's not. And these nuances that people feel that they're supporting or fighting for, that's not what's it's about. There's something much more important going on than that.
Yeah, I for one, I think it's very, very intriguing how you described it is the most enslaved type of art form, music, in the modern age,
Well,
and
you
the
also
way
said television,
and
so I
tell
was including both of those things. I don't I well, but a lot of that also has to do with corporate control.
it's
So
influenced by what comes before it.
it's culture is in general, of course, that's the definition of
Yeah.
culture. If it's something made by a human, so everything becomes culture, and yes, it's a reflection of what the societal mood is, so to speak.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The reason I asked about it is from a creative perspective of how the freedom of speech is, put out through mediums like with lyrics and movies and television, and these are expressions of the ideologies and emotions of the creator. We recently interviewed best-selling author Tom O'Neill and his coverage of Charles Manson, of course. And during the legal proceedings of that, what they were trying to do is they were trying to tag responsibility, claim Charles Manson was involved in influencing the people that carried out, through his medium of music. And so I really do think it's interesting as you talk about the
Well,
parallels
again,
with,
it's songs.
yes,
Charles Manson, and I covered Charles Manson's song. I had an album out in 1989, and I covered one of his songs, which
Which
I
one?
also
I'm a big fan of
always
his music.
is always forever,
That's a
and
good
I
one.
also used that song in my first film. What is it? And I noticed later that in Tarantino's film.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
He used the same song as well. I can't remember if he used the original or had somebody singing it. It's a very interesting song. I think I know
Mhm.
the lyrics. Always is always forever is one is one is one inside yourself for your father. All is love, all is none, none is one. Kindly fall back from inside you. The illusion has been just a dream. The valley of death will not find you. Um, I forgot the last part. All is kindly fall back from inside. Always is always forever. Is one is one is one. Inside yourself or your father. All is love, all is none, none is one. Kindly fall back from inside you. The illusion has been just a dream. The valley of death is inside you. Something a dream. Anyhow, I wish I'm forgetting the very last lyric, but it is good poetry writing. But that's a different, again, that's a different thing than music. It's I mean, that Tom O'Neill thing is fascinating because it does seem like it's. I haven't read the book. I've just seen some of his
Oh
interviews.
man, this book
I need to read it.
will
Yeah.
blow your mind,
I
man.
well, I've felt for various reasons. I think a lot of people have always been skeptical about the helter-skelter
Oh yeah.
narrative. And I am skeptical of the helter-skelter. I have been skeptical of the helter-skelter narrative for a long, long time, and it is I his research is seems amazing, and the way that he talks about it, I it's he, it does it I don't know how somebody wouldn't question um what has been put forth, but also what I mean, it's there are multiple interpretations. Again, I haven't read the book, of just having heard Tom O'Neill speak. Uh, if Charles Manson really was used as a CIA operative in some way, and he was writing lyrics like that, which falling back from inside you, the illusion has been just a dream. These are sort of hypnotic. I don't know. I don't know what was going on, but something fascinating has happened because this idea that LSD was a an opposition to the war interests of the U.S. Industrial military industrial complex, and that needed to essentially be eradicated as a movement because you can see tests of military figures being given, I think it's in France, but they're given LSD and then they have guns, but they don't, the guns become this strange thing they put down and they're laughing. It's the opposite of a murderous drug. It's not what it is, but somehow under the helter-skelter narrative, it became the reason that there were these murders. I mean, of course, psychedelics can go into many different directions. So depending on what somebody has experienced, who knows? I don't know, but it opens up a lot of questions as to control and intent of the government. I mean, and then of course now we have this Jeffrey Epstein thing, which is what is that?
Yeah. Don't
If
look here.
if the U.S. government has been involved in very strange operations going back to the 60s or before, and now we have some evidence of something having to do with children that might be involved with the U.S. Is this involved with the intelligence of the U.S. or other countries? It seems like it, but I don't know. I don't know. These are dangerous things to talk about.
Yep.
It feels like there are people. It's a very strange time.
Well,
I,
that's what we do here on our show is we talk about those kind of topics and we dig deep, man, and it's been an honor to have you on the show and I like what you're doing. with your like you're just building the sets. You do everything. It's like you do it with love, and I've always respected that about you. And
Well,
yeah,
thank you. Yeah,
man.
I use the word amateur. The way I make my films is in amateur because I'm not doing it. I've worked on professional films, and there's a very particular structure to how they do it, and it makes sense in the way it's done. I wouldn't be against making a film in that way, but amateur, of course, comes from amore, the for the love of something. I mean, it means something else as well, but uh, yeah, I'll be very interested to see how people react to this movie and some of the topics that that we've been discussing, whether they're visibly noticeable. These are things that on some level are in my films in various ways. What is it predated the Epstein stuff, but of course I shouldn't talk about the subject, so I probably should just leave it at that. But it's I try to on some level let some of these things simmer beneath the surface of the films that people are able to interpret and think about these things because it's definitely a strange time. I don't know what's going to well, nobody knows what's going to happen, but it is a bit uneasy. I assume most people feel a bit uneasy about what's going on, and my film, Know You're Wrong or Spooky Action at a Distance, even though I started making it more than 10 years ago, this kind of stuff has been brewing for a while. And it seems like,
The perfect time.
well, it seems like there are things that are continuing to percolate and getting stronger, and I don't know how great that is. And like I say, that's why I've not published this book. There's too many things in it that I think people could. I it's been since I've toured with my films. When I made What Is It, I in a certain way, I was almost naive about um, things that I just felt would be. Um, well, that would be taken in the way that we contemporarily take the surrealists of yesteryear. But I was dealing with maybe certain contemporary subjects, and again, I've never put it out digitally purposely because people get really mad. I can feel it when I come out and I have the Q&A after that film, and it's part of why I made it as a Q&A was to let people understand that there was a perspective. This wasn't just a random thing that was to bother people. There were elements in culture in society that I was seeing, and I would say the film, which I haven't toured with since the year 2000, there will be things that are that much more pertinent than when I last toured, but there will be things that would make people even that much angrier than when I toured between 2005 and 2020. I want to tour again with it, but I also have concern about it too because I just the culture feels a little unstable right now. It feels like there are things that are brewing that are really dangerous. And
Well, well,
uh,
just know you're always welcome to come on here and
thank
speak
you.
freely. So we'd love to have you back anytime, man.
Yeah. Well, I'll be touring around. I plan to continue touring. The reason I stopped was because of the pandemic. I had that not happened, I would have just continued touring. So I plan to continue touring. And yes, I like being able to talk and get the word out. And it's nice talking with you guys. I've enjoyed it.
It's been really fun, man. And
You
I
too.
appreciate everything you do. And yeah, man, thank you.
Well, thank you too. And yeah, we'll have another conversation at some point. That'd be great.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
November 22nd, 1963 is a day that the world changed forever. Not because of Kennedy. That was the first time the word conspiracy theorist was used to demonize people like us. Truth or Con is very important. It's where us truth seekers are getting together.
If you like what we do here on Skiba News Nation, please like and subscribe. And also share with others so we can grow the biggest truth-seeking community on the internet. Huge shout out to all of our Patreons out there. If you like bonus content, you want some extra Skiba News Nation stuff, please go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation.
Son of the legendary Rob Jeremiah Skiba.
It's like I don't even want to wake up.